Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam, Caplan. Hope everyone enjoyed their July 4th holiday weekend. And Adam, once you get past the July 4th weekend, that Eagles training camp is right around the corner. We're going to have some really exciting content leading up to that. And then pretty soon we'll be into training camp and the season. And my gosh, that's it's hard to believe it's all just right around the corner, just a couple of weeks away.
Yeah, when a club wins a Super Bowl, in this case, the Eagles, I mean, their offseason's shorter, and that's kind of where we're at with them. But, yeah, the league, it's funny. Within a week, some teams are actually reporting earlier. They're starting a little earlier than the other teams. There's some teams that are starting a week earlier than majority of the clubs. So that's where we're at. Yeah, training camps are right around the corner. We're looking forward to it.
All right, and I think we did a pretty well. First of all, let me just thank a lot of people. We got a ton of feedback, mostly positive, from fans all around the NFC East for our NFC East preview series that we do every year with Greg Cosell. We just break down have Greg break down the tape. We give some intel. We try to keep it objective. I mean, when teams bad, we'll call it, but it seems like Giants fans and Commanders fans, even Cowboys fans, thought it was very fair and balanced, and we got a ton of listeners outside of the Philadelphia fan area just reaching out to us. So appreciate everybody who shared it, maybe in the media for us. And it's one of the series I think that we're most proud of, just because we take the scalpel and the forceps to these teams, and we really perform surgery, and the tape breakdown is really fascinating from Greg.
Yeah, the funny thing is the Giants one got the most play, and it's fun. Most were not only complimentary, they felt that they learned. And then there were a couple, and you're going to get this no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. Oh, we don't know what we're talking about. We're idiots. We're morons. Russell Wilson's going to be great. You don't know what you're talking about. I put out a lot of information on Russell Wilson the last couple of years. Not all of it positive. I've told the truth. He's not the easiest guy to coach. Good person, but in terms of football, he wants to do things his way. He's had clashes, which are no surprise. Sean Payton, others over the years, and there's some Giants fans who are delusional, think, oh, all that stuff doesn't matter. You're not right about that. You don't know what you're talking about. All this stuff. Well, then why does he keep moving on, folks? It's a quarterback. You don't keep moving on if you're great. Please do the math. Go ahead.
Yeah, what Adam is specifically referring to is someone wrote like a 55 paragraph dissertation on Russell Wilson that I only made it through about 8 lines of. So this person was.
I know it's great. I mean, it's a lot of it. It's factually incorrect, but the guy he took the time out to type that. I don't know where he got this information. I just was laughing. It's funny how as you know, when fans read either bloggers who are not plugged in or the aggregators, they don't know where they're getting the information from. They just see, oh, well, this must be true. Then they don't question anything.
Right. Of course.
But anyway, it's fun.
But that was a great series, and we turned the page. And listen, this podcast was interesting. This is Adam's idea, and I thought it was a really good one because in a very strange way, some big news in the NFL that does have impact or tentacles that extend to the Eagles sort of got glossed over. And it was, it first came to light with Pablo Torre, NFL reporter, used to work for ESPN. I think he has his own podcast now. Is that? I don't.
Yeah, he's a general reporter. He's really not an NFL reporter. He's a general sports reporter, right? And who used to be at ESPN. And yeah, him and Mike Florio did this great podcast, just talking about on the document that Pablo he was able to acquire, and it's this 61-page ruling or document from a neutral arbitrator who talks about that, and this is the quote from system arbitrator Christian Rodroni, who was the one who ruled on it. The quote: "There's little question that the NFL Management Council, with the blessing of the commissioner, encouraged the 32 NFL clubs to reduce guarantees and veteran contracts at the March meeting in March 22. That one was at Palm Beach. I was at that. We'll get into that a little bit later, which I never thought I'd be thinking about this again. This is in the back of my mind, but I didn't think it really would matter. But wow, this is interesting. And it really is pointed to the Deshaun Watson contract, right? Which, as you was ridiculous. But you know what? Someone was going to give it to him. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yep.
But this document was put together, and Droney's ruling or statement was put out in, I believe, January of this year. And this is the way it is. It's just funny how, and I guess Mike Florio wrote about it, how you're not hearing a lot of comments from agents or anyone, and some in the media are not doing it. I'm like, why would you not? I mean, the CBA is not up until March of 2031. I mean, obviously the two sides could start working on earlier. This is a big story. This is a big deal. Now, obviously, the NFL, you can understand why they don't want it out, or don't want anyone talking about it, because of this document where a system arbitrator is the title for Christopher Droney, that says that the management council, which is, by the way, the body that the NFL has that overlooks every contract and a lot of money issues, and they strongly encourage the NFL to reduce guaranteed contracts. That's a big deal, obviously.
Yeah. So let's try to put this in layman's terms, because there's going to be a lot of wonky language. You started to say that this arbitrator, Judge Droney, found that the NFL attempted to, or I guess the phrasing of it was that encouraged teams to not give out guaranteed contracts. However, at the same time, this arbitrator ruled officially that there is, despite the encouragement of the NFL, that there was not enough evidence to actually conclude that the NFL owners did in fact collude. Okay, so that's two interesting things here. One, there was an attempt at coercion or persuasion into it, but in the end, there was not enough evidence of it, and that's sort of largely why I think it's kind of gone under the radar, is because the case is, well, it's not that the case is closed, but the NFL was not found guilty of collusion, despite some pretty, I don't know, interesting evidence that was presented in the case. And how this involves the Eagles, as I understand it, Adam, and we'll get to sort of the vibe when you were around that meeting in 2022, is that it wasn't just quarterback contracts. It was coming out of COVID. That was the big one, obviously. But teams, when the salary cap went down coming out of COVID for the first time, smart, crafty teams started to do things that you see the Eagles do routinely now, which is take non-guaranteed money and turn it into guaranteed cash that you spread out over time, which is now what the Eagles do routinely. It is a form of giving non-guaranteed money and turning it into guaranteed money. And as I understand it, part of that presentation from Jeff Pash of the Management Council of the NFL was just an overall concern by the NFL Management Council, therefore the NFL, that there was too much guaranteed money now starting to be given to contracts, not just the quarterbacks, but these big contracts. And that was opening up the door for a slippery slope into the future. And I think that's why, Adam, you're starting to hear about it more. We heard from Roger Goodell in the last, I guess, owners meetings, that one of the discussions going into the future will be the integrity of the salary cap and how certain teams are maneuvering. I mean, they might as well just come out and say how the Eagles are doing business, right? So this does, even though the Deshaun Watson thing really doesn't involve the Eagles, because they never really truly got into it once the negotiations came down. They were out by then. But this thought process by the NFL owners and the NFL, that there's just too much guaranteed money going out and too much manipulation of the salary cap, that is a threat to how the Eagles do business in the future.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in the future, you talk about years down the line, it's not going to be a factor in the next couple of years, but it could be. Like, think about it, right? Let's say we get to 2029, 2028, and they're doing a 5-year structure. They're doing a 5-year deal. And then, by then, because we're getting now is generally the best players are now getting 3 years fully guaranteed. We're not getting 5. The only one who got 5 was Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might get a little bit of fully guaranteed money in year 4, but you not get all of it guaranteed, fully guaranteed in year 4. Well, let's say you get to 2029 and the fourth year of that deal is after the CBA expires. That becomes a slippery slope, because how are you going to structure that deal? Things could change. That's the thing that you worry about. The next couple of years are not a problem, but when you get to 28 and 29, it becomes a big problem. And you're absolutely right. The Eagles are a team that's being targeted. It's not their fault, or there are a couple other teams who do similar structures like the Eagles. Very few of them do, because they don't want future dead money if it doesn't work out with a player. Eagles have made smart bets on their players. It means signing guys early, making sure they don't make mistakes, make sure you identify the right players to extend early. A lot of teams aren't willing to do that. Look at what the Cowboys have done. It's cost them way more money because they continue to wait. The Eagles don't do that. They identify a great player, a very good player, and they get it done early. They take on the burden early in the contract, but do they get a bargain on structure. How much is fully guaranteed at signing comparatively to some other deals that are going to get done because they're doing it early.
Right. So it feels like the Eagles are getting penalized for being smart, but in the end, the NFL is strange, because I know that an arbitrator once ruled that they are 32 independent businesses, and that's how they get away with not, being beholden to certain antitrust laws. But they work together under a salary cap that is collectively bargained. So while they don't always operate as a monolith, there are times that they do. Right? They're united against the players when it comes to the CBA, and vice versa. So it causes interest, because whenever something happens where one or two or three teams do something differently that the other teams doesn't like, then it starts to disrupt the overall feeling of unity and solidarity that is sort of not supposed to be there in the first place. And I think I've always known about it, but as a reporter, what was the year where the uncapped year, was that from COVID? Right. That was similar, right? Coming out of COVID. Remember that the NFL punished, I think, the Cowboys, the Commanders at the time, or Washington Redskins at the time, and some other teams for violating. There was sort of unwritten rules about how much money teams were going to be allowed to spend coming out of that. You remember that when the Cowboys?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And the NFL punished them for doing that. So that was an example of where a couple of teams went rogue, and then everybody had to get in line, and the NFL came down on them.
Right. Now, see, no team. Look, Goodell could talk about closing loopholes. Like, Eagles are a major cash over cap team. We've talked about this for a number of years. And we brought it to light, talk about the option bonuses inside the contract. A typical Eagles contract for a veteran will be 5 years. They'll have the first couple years of fully guaranteed options. Then the future, like years 4 and 5, have option bonuses, but they're not guaranteed. Clubs don't like doing that because it creates future proration. They're worried about the longer you get and the older these players get, the more hurt they get, and then you're zapped with dead money. The Eagles don't seem to care about dead money like other clubs do. It's the way it was explained to me. It's generally overrated, because if you're a good drafting team or a good signing team, it's not a factor, except for teams like the Saints. But anyway, most teams don't want to do contracts like the Eagles, and they're definitely. We typically roll our eyes at when people say the Eagles are being discriminated against, but this is a clear situation. The Eagles are really good at something. Other clubs will complain. Trust me on this. This stuff has gone on for decades, with clubs being jealous of each other. That's just the way it is. They are 32 individual clubs, and a lot of owners can't stand each other. It's another thing for another time, for another discussion. As you know, they're I mean, talk about the knives being out. I mean, they are some hatred between some owners against each other. They're nice to each other publicly when they see the owners' meetings, but behind their backs, they're pulling their knives out.
It's like you could see it in a movie. And you can understand how it is. I mean, these are 32 very wealthy individuals, and they're also very competitive. They're all trying to kick each other's ass on the football field, and they will have no issue finding any loophole, whether it's contracts or player development, anything, to get the edge. However, how quickly these owners who can't stand each other, who are competitive, not all of them, but you know what we're talking about, how quickly they will become unified when it's the players asking for like 2 percentage points more of the overall pie. And then all of a sudden the owners get together and then you have lockout situations and everybody is within solidarity. But that is sort of the nature of the business. You have 32 extremely wealthy I guess not technically 32 because the Packers have a president and there are some teams that have a board, but you know what I mean.
Publicly
32
known. Yeah, they're publicly
representatives,
known.
right, who are very competitive. And like most business owners are willing to stretch certain rules. Like a lot of business owners will stretch tax rules, right, for the benefit of their own. And then when other competing owners do something better or more or win, they get jealous or they want to call them out. You see this at every level of business, and it's just funny when it comes to the forefront. But I want to circle back here.
Okay.
Say how this is not all about Deshaun Watson, but became about Deshaun Watson even more so. The meeting in where I believe Jeff Pash of the management council encouraged the owners to not start really giving as much guaranteed money as they are, or noticing the trend and encouraging owners to rein it in, was 2022, which was sort of coming out of COVID and everything when they were showing numbers. But the Watson contract was 2024, if I'm not mistaken, correct? No.
No. What's 22?
No, that's 2000.
22.
I'm sorry, I have my dates mixed up. When did Watson sign that deal?
He signed it in March of 2022. So what happened was within a week it just so happened, okay?
Yeah.
It just so happened that the owners' meetings was within a week in Palm Beach. I was there. Let's get to that. Let's move to that. This is a 5-year deal worth $46 million per season. 5 years, fully guaranteed at $230 million was the total value of the deal. It's just, and remember,
the meeting did take place after that contract.
Yes,
right?
within like a week. Yeah,
Right.
it was like late March. Yeah, that's the craziness of it. Now, you bring up Jeff Pash, who I believe he retired. Did he not retire? Jeff
Yeah,
Pash?
I think there's someone else in charge of the management council at the moment. Yeah.
Right. So Jeff's an attorney. I've talked to Jeff over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the guaranteed money thing is the reason why clubs, the commissioner, others are worried about the fully guaranteed money at signing is because of the injury factor.
Right.
If guys are not available, they don't want to be in the hook for future cash. I get that, but that's the nature of the business. And there's got to be somewhere you can meet in the middle, and that's the fundamental issue: is that neither the NFLPA and the NFL cannot agree on what the guaranteed money should look like and for how long.
Right. What I meant to say was it was the Kirk Cousins contract in 2018 that was the first real fully guaranteed one, and it didn't shake the earth, but that preceded COVID, and then COVID happened. Then the cash to cap thing started to go on as teams were scrambling, and then the Deshaun Watson contract happened, and that sort of made the NFL really start to say, the NFL as an umbrella company, management council, start to give this presentation to the owners. And what I find interesting is that the arbitrator ruled, I guess they obviously did an investigation, right? And a lot of the owners said they didn't even remember that meeting or what was said, which was part of the reason why they couldn't prove collusion. All of a sudden, owners couldn't remember that meeting. Like, oh, was that really happened? You know,
which I find comical.
I do too. It's because you contrast that with what you said, right? Everybody at the owners' meetings, the owners were upset about this. I mean, you could probably read it in their body language.
Let me tell you something. Let me add to that. So in Palm Beach, there at I believe it was the Breakers. I was so blown away by the Watson contract because this is so not what, like the Cousins contract that you talked about was 3 years fully guaranteed. Okay. First time ever anyone got 3 years fully guaranteed. Since then, by the way, see, it's tricky with Trevor Lawrence's deal. It's 4 years fully guaranteed, but the money in year 4 isn't very big. And plus it's based on his 5th year. Part of it is combining his 5th year option. Well, when you do that, it's really not. The structure's the best. The agent did a very good job. I got to be honest with you. They did the best job they possibly could. But it's not quite the deal that you think it is. But the bottom line is it was kind of like, I remember one cap manager for a club who I've known forever, 20 some odd years. I remember, I'm paraphrasing because it's not like I wrote it down. He goes, the audacity of the Browns to do this for a guy who had major allegations against him in Watson, of all people to give a 5-year deal to. And I said to the guy, I said, dude, if it wasn't going to be the Browns, somebody else is going to do it. Come on. He was a quarterback.
It was a unique situation. Yeah.
Yeah. And remember, the Panthers were out. They didn't want to do the structure. They were very public about it. Falcons were in on it to a degree. A couple other teams, the Eagles, as we know, they really were very interested in Watson.
Mm-hmm.
If Watson wanted to be an Eagle, that could have been something different, but that's a 30 for 30. But the bottom line is, to move this along here, clubs have not, the quarterback position, despite it being the most important in sports, it is not advanced to the degree that it should in terms of structure. You're not getting fully guaranteed money in a big number, 30 or 40 million in year 4. Nobody's doing that. The only team that did it, 46 million a year. 46 million. No one's come close to doing that.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And so the NFLPA tried to really hammer home their point. And here's what surprises me the most. I'll get to that in a second. But they tried to hammer home their point by a couple of years later, when Russell Wilson was a free agent, when Lamar Jackson was available because he had a contract dispute going on with the Ravens, and when Kyler Murray was doing his contract, that none of those three were able to get guaranteed money. How does Deshaun Watson get guaranteed money, but these three quarterbacks who are, accomplished and did what they did couldn't? But the arbitrator did not find enough evidence in that and the other stuff we talked about to really say that is a definitive form of collusion. So that's where the NFLPA wasn't able to win. That was, I felt, the NFLPA's strongest argument, especially Lamar Jackson, but it just it wasn't enough for the arbitrator. And so here you have a situation where I guess what surprises me is this was pretty quiet. Like, nobody knew about this arbitration ruling until Pablo Torre and Mike Florio brought it to light. I'm a little surprised the NFLPA did not be the louder voice in the room.
Yes,
that's so like, you're representing the players. If you firmly believe this is happening, you should be smearing the owners every cent. In baseball,
exactly.
In baseball, the MLBPA takes the owners and rakes them under the coals about as hard as you can do it. Anytime they think over the coals. Sorry, about any time they think the owners are colluding, which the MLBPA pretty much accuses the owners of colluding every 5 to 6 years. They're very loud and outspoken about it. I'm very surprised the NFLPA didn't beat the drum harder, and I can't figure out why not.
It's funny because I'm reading the quote where the system arbitrator says encouraged. Wouldn't you say strongly encouraged, though? I mean, come on.
They had a meeting and basically said, let's not do this.
Right, exactly. So, all right, to close this, there are a couple things I want to add. So the Russell Wilson contract, and what's funny about it, people forgot about this. It was the same exact year. 6 months after Watson signed his contract, Wilson signed his with Denver in September of 2022. 5 years, $49 million a year, but the guarantees were far less, $165 million. He had leverage. Now, Mark Rodgers, I'll give him his agent credit for this. I don't know the guy. I know with Seattle, he wanted the initial talks with Seattle with Russell's extensions were, we want to do a fully guaranteed contract. They basically told him to get lost. It got contentious in the beginning. They like, we're not doing that. And the Seahawks went back down, and Rodgers did all that he could. He's a baseball agent, but you could say that the PA could be mad at Rodgers. Oh, why couldn't he get the same deal? The reality is nobody's doing it. That's why we're talking about this today. It's because of the injury factor. It's just they're worried about later in a contract, guy gets hurt, and the Cubs don't want to be the hook for it. If you own a business, and if you know your employee will not be available for a long period of time, you got to pay him no matter what because it's fully guaranteed. You feel like you don't want to deal with it, and that's that. And for a future show, this is where I want to discuss down the road what it could look like, what could be approached by the NFLPA. That's a discussion for another point. And of course, the league will not want to do it, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, to I guess emphasize your point and put it in the Eagles' perspective, you look at the AJ Brown extension that he signed. Obviously, he's making a lot of money. A lot of it is in those option bonuses, correct, that we talk about. And there's also the history of the knee, so that if he wound up missing significant amount of time because of the knees, the way the contract's structured, Eagles could probably get out of it without, obviously they're going to take on some dead money, but there's ways that they can maneuver around it, as opposed to if the entire contract was guaranteed and he had a problem, it'd be really stuck. In fact, look at Bryce Huff. If that entire contract was guaranteed when Bryce Huff signed it, the Eagles would be in real trouble right now, and he would still be on the team, and it would be pretty difficult for them. So a lot of what they do, how they structure contracts, how they use option bonuses, is because it gives them a little bit of wiggle room that ordinarily, a lot of wiggle room actually, that would not exist if contracts were guaranteed.
For instance, okay, the A.J. Brown contract, which goes through 2029, the final 3 years are not guaranteed. The full guarantees expire after 26. That goes on what you were just talking about. They took on the early risk, but the late risk is on the player. And this is why agents try to keep going back to the club. Hey, we're now in year 4. We have 2 years left. Let's try to get my client done now. He's very worried about the final 2 years of the deal for injury reasons. That goes strictly on what you're talking about. That's why agents like to get, they don't want to do the long structure, but if they have to, they want to redo it after year 3.
There you go. All right. So here's what I think eventually we'll finish with this. I do, even though the tush push never got banned, I do think fundamentally we are correct in saying when Roger Goodell wants something, he typically tends to get it. And when he's already sowing the seeds of salary cap inauthenticity or disingenuity or whatever term he used, then he's sowing the seeds for a reason. And I don't think it's going to take a whole lot to convince owners, right, to come together in a non-collusive way to make sure that the cap is not maneuvered the same way that it is now, and that there's more integrity, because that's going to help all of the owners in the long run. So when did you say the CBA is up? At 2000?
March of 2031. By the way, just one final point on what you just said. It's the haves and have-nots.
Yep.
The Colts, the Bengals, particularly the Bengals, are not a cash-rich team, okay?
Right.
Eagles are a cash-rich team. So are the Cowboys. Some other clubs are very rich. The new Washington ownership group with Josh Harris.
Yep.
They have plenty of cash. So it's not that those the clubs that have a lot of money, it's not their fault. But this is, you're a big MLB guy. This is disparity. While the Marlins and some other clubs, Washington, the Nats, they don't spend money because they don't have it.
Pirates especially, yes.
The Pirates, oh my God, it's disgusting. It's not fair to the fans. Well, this is the system that you have.
Right.
Haves and have-nots. What are you going to do about it?
Yes. And then there's always that in between. These owners have money, like the Pirates owner, Nutting. He could spend more. It's just his decision to play victim and say we are the smallest of the small markets and we can't operate like there's some,
they don't move money to that area.
Also, yeah, there's also some victim, I guess, taking on that victim mentality too that they don't have to have. But yeah,
Bengals.
Absolutely.
Talk to Carl Pickens about that. Our friend Carl Pickens, who was great with us when he did our interview. That's exactly what happened. But anyway.
I like this because this felt very inside the data-ish, and I hope that everybody did catch our recent Inside the Data with Sam Finkel. And it was an awesome episode. We sought to answer the question, what happens when JalenHurts is asked to throw the ball at or above the league average, which is around 33 attempts per game? What happens to his numbers? Because there's perceptions and then there's reality. And I think everybody should go and make sure they check it out so they can be informed on what those perceptions are and whether they're correct or not, or whether the reality and what the reality is. It's really good. Sam did an excellent job of crunching some numbers, comparing them to other guys. And it's one of the best Inside the Data mailbags that we've ever done. So
love it. Real quick. So we'll file this show up today. We're in the part 2 of this. We're going to take a look at what contracts could look like in the future. I've talked to agents about this. They have some wild suggestions. One that I absolutely love, but I can't see the way the league would agree to it. But we'll do that on a future show before training camp, by the way.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.